Welcome everyone to Mrs. Silva's virtual classroom. I'm so excited for you guys to be here today. It's our first art class. So the materials you are going to need are a white piece of paper, a pencil, a ruler if you have one. If not, don't worry, I can show you how to fold your paper in fours. A black crayon, watercolor paints, or a box of crayons. It's up to you. Either is fine. If you're going to be painting, make sure you have a cup of water to clean your brush and a napkin to dab your brush or any messes that may happen. So for class objective today, we are going to be learning about the famous Russian artist Wassily Kandinsky, who is an abstract painter. Then we'll move on to creating our own inspired painting. So our lesson for the day. Wassily Kandinsky was born on December 16, 1866, and died on December 13, 1944, so he lived to be 77 years old. If you can hear the way that I'm pronouncing his name, I'm using a V instead of a W, so Wassily instead of Wassily. He grew up in Russia and moved to Germany, and during World War I, he actually had to move back to Russia. And he was a musician and moved on to be a teacher. And he was actually inspired in his 30s to become a painter. And he was one of the first artists to create abstract art. Many of you have probably seen abstract art and might have thought there's different shapes. You may have seen different forms used, colors and textures. Many of these you can find in a museum, or you can go on YouTube and look up abstract art on Wikipedia, Google, any one of those. Kandinsky specifically was famous for his use of the color to express emotion in his paintings. And that's very important because he had a neurological disorder called synesthesia, where he actually heard colors while listening to music. So he would listen to music while he was painting to be inspired, feel those emotions, hear the colors, and based on the music that he was listening to, those are the colors that he actually used in his painting. So let's take a few. And I want you to think about what do you hear when you see these colors? I know we don't have that, but when you see yellow, what do you feel? Or what sound comes to mind when you see yellow? What do you feel when you look at blue? Or what sound comes to mind when you think of blue? We can see that there's different shapes. He used different textures. And on this last one, this was called his color study. And this was one of his most famous works of art. And it actually wasn't intended to be. So that means that he did it without wanting it to be famous, without wanting to put it in a museum, and it actually became one of the most famous paintings that he did. So our art project is actually going to be inspired by the color study, and we are going to try out different color combinations just like he used here. So we'll create our own. If you haven't already grabbed your materials, go ahead and do so and make sure to give yourself enough space. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe. And when you're done, you can take a picture, have your parent post it, and use the hashtag LMS for Little Miss Silva's virtual classroom. Okay, so you want to grab all your materials. I have here my watercolors. I got this one at Michael's. Make sure you have your water, clean water, and your napkin if necessary. I have my pencil, my eraser. I'm going to be using my clipboard today with my white paper, my crayons, and I'm going to take out my black crayon. Set it aside. And then depending on whatever you want to use, I'm going to keep those both on hand. We're going to fold our white paper. So we have hamburger and hot dog style, I'm going to fold it hamburger style first. Make sure to have a crease, fold, and then I'm going to open it and fold it hot dog style. Make sure to have a crease and then open it up. Now what I'm going to do is fold from the bottom to the crease and the half. And we're going to do the same for the top. So fold the top into the crease. I think this is a lot easier to do compared to a ruler. So if you don't want to use your ruler, totally fine. Now we're going to take the sides, crease in, fold it in half, and we're going to do the same for the other side. So side into the crease and fold. So now that I have all of my folds done, you can see that there's 4 rows and 4 columns. So we wanted to make sure that just like the Kandinsky, we had enough circles for each one. Next, I'm going to grab my pencil and we are going to get started. So for my canvas, in each square, you're going to want to draw a circle, and these don't need to be perfect circles at all. I think freehanding it is easiest, and in art, no one shapes or paintings or in general, nothing is ever going to be perfect, and we like it that way because it makes yours unique. So if you would like to find something around your house that's a circle and it fits in the square, then that's totally fine. You can go ahead and trace it, but I think it's just easier to freehand, so I encourage you to do the same. So I'm going to start with my first square, and it's going to be a little bit light so that we can trace it or paint over it, and I'm going to do that for all of the squares. So go ahead, and you can see that I'm going to go around a little bit. Sometimes it's easier to start lightly and then go again around it. Definitely take your time. We don't need to rush. If circles are easy for you to make, that's more power to you. Circles are a little bit harder for me, so I'm taking my time. And you want to make sure that the circle is not too big, not too small, that there's still room for a border. So we're going to finish up our last 2. And then we're going to get started. So the top row I'm going to use to show you how to do this with the watercolors. So we're going to use our black circle to trace the top row. You can do watercolors if you want for the whole thing, or half, or just a few, or crayons, but the black crayon I'm specifically using for watercolors. So I'll show you that example. If you want to get started with just using crayons, then you can go ahead and color your circle whatever color you'd like. For the watercolors, the black circle just stands out a little bit more. That's why I chose to use it. So you would do this for the whole row, the rest as well, as if you're using watercolors, or if you choose to use crayons, totally up to you. So taking my time again to go over the circle, making sure I'm tracing. And I'm going to get my watercolors ready, so you can see that there's plenty of colors to choose from. I got this one from Michael's and it came with a brush. if you're looking for a palette, you can go to Michael's and find it for $5. I do know Target, Walmart all have palettes there as well. I'm a big fan of the Crayola one. I just wasn't able to find it. I think all the school supplies were definitely have been taken up. So I'm going to place this here for you to see. And just like in the Kandinskys, we are going to be focusing on our complementary colors. And to start, you can pick whatever color you may like. With complementary colors, we want to focus on which ones are opposite of each other. So out of all the colors that you have, go ahead and pick one. So after you pick that, I'm going to choose red first. You can choose whatever color you like. And its complementary color, its opposite, would be green. So I would be working with red, maybe green, next maybe yellow. Yellow and red are primary colors. So with the opposite color, we're looking at yellow and purple maybe, as well as blue is a primary color. And the opposite would be orange. So if you want to focus on using those, that would be great. And if you want to choose, red, blue, yellow, that's totally fine too. Completely up to you. Now we're going to focus on some of the complementary again. So like I said, the green, the purple, the orange, you can definitely use those. I encourage you to use whatever colors you'd like. And don't even focus on copying mine or copying the Kandinsky. This is totally free will, whatever colors you like, whatever you feel. Remember, he was listening to music, so if you want to listen to music while you paint, go ahead and turn that music on. I'm going to start with red, and we're going to begin by making a small circle in the middle of our big circle. So it's not the whole thing, just a small circle. And your circles on the inside do not have to be perfect. That's the reason why we didn't draw them in the beginning. So make sure to go from one color to the next. We wipe off our brush in the clean water, maybe dab it on your napkin, and I'm going to use yellow next. So I'm going to be using another primary color. And what I'm going to do is go around the small circle. And definitely take your time with watercolors. If you use more water, the color is going to be light. And if you use less water, it's going to be brighter. A little bit darker. So next, we are going to go on to our next circle. That's around the outermost one. So I just got done using yellow. Now I'm going to go again around that. And if we use too much water, it might cause the circles to bleed together. So definitely make sure that you've wiped your brush off a little bit, that you don't want water dripping from the paintbrush. Because if we just dab the whole paper in water, then it's definitely going to be oversaturated and the colors will bleed together. So next I'm going to use a green, and this will be my last circle. So the white around the orange will go away. And you can see it's not a perfect circle. That's absolutely fine. And I'm just going to go around painting the rest of the circle. So because I want it a little bit darker, I'm going to go back. And you can see that less water is being used, so it comes up a little bit darker. Okay, so now you would do that for the rest of them, if that's what you choose to do. If you choose to use watercolors, now I'm going to fill in the background. So make sure to stay within the square, and for this one I'm going to use yellow, a darker yellow, and we're just going to be filling in the square that the circle is in. If you have a clipboard, I would highly suggest using it, or if you can tape your paper down, that would also be great, because when you're working with watercolors on an entire page, the paper tends to kind of ripple because of the amount of water that goes onto the paper. If you have a heavier paper like cardstock, that's also a good one to use, but for this project, I just like using regular copy printer paper. Anything works. So I have just finished my first square for our circle Kandinsky. I'm going to close these watercolors. If you want to keep going with your watercolors, go right ahead, but I'm going to put these to the side, and I'm going to show you how I use crayons. So in order to use crayons, I didn't outline the rest in black because I want to outline it in the colors that I choose to use. So I'm going to start out with purple. And I'm going to make my first circle very similarly to the way that we did in the first one. Start in the innermost part of the larger circle. You can make it dark, you can make it light, it's totally up to you. Next, I'm going to go around it with yellow because purple and yellow are complementary. They're opposites of each other, and I'm just going to take out all the crayons so it's easier to use, easier to see the colors. And just like the painting, we're going to go around our first innermost circle. You can make it thick, you can make it thin. It's completely up to you. And you can see that they are contrasting each other. So the purple definitely stands out. Next, I'm going to use a green, a variation of green. And I'm going to go around the yellow with that. Like I said, you can use any colors that you would like. I'm just picking ones that stand out to me. Now I'm going to choose pink, and it's kind of a lighter pink, just like I used the lighter green. And always remember, we don't have boy colors, we don't have girl colors. I'm choosing to use whichever color I want to use next. Pink is completely fine, green is completely fine, blue is great, red is great. If it looks good to you, then I definitely encourage you to use it. Crayons are a little bit easier to use than the watercolors because you're not having to go back and forth changing out your brush with the water. So I prefer to use the crayons. I'm going to finish my circle by going to the outermost corners with yellow. or the outermost part of the circle in yellow. And now that I finished my circle, you can guess what comes next. I'm going to erase the edges of the sketch that I made with the pencils. And that's the good part about using pencils, right? We can erase. So now I'm going to use orange as my border. That one's red orange. I want regular orange. There it is. Okay, so now I'm going to use my crayon. And if you notice the way that I'm coloring, I'm going up and down and creating a border and moving inward, so closer to the circle. And this is important, right? Because we know that when we're coloring with crayons, we can see the direction of the crayon. And sometimes if we scribble like that, it doesn't always come out as nice and neat as it could possibly come out. So I definitely encourage you guys to hold your pencil or hold your pencils and your crayons in similar ways, the same way if possible. If I was gripping it like that, the crayon would definitely come out a lot darker, could possibly break, and then it also looks very scribbly, right? So we definitely want to hold our crayon similar to our pencil, move up and down, or back and forth, whichever direction we choose to go in. We definitely want to stay that way. So now I'm finishing up. I'm going to create a border. And there you have it. So if I were going to finish this whole thing in crayon, they would look very similar. I would choose different colors. And if you don't have a lot of colors, that's totally fine. Just rotate your colors out. You can also reference the Kandinsky painting that we had in our lesson earlier. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this. And I will see you guys soon for our next lesson.